comic books that need to be disputed, my fee is free. Welcome to this broadcast time again. I know I'm old school, just forget me, Comic books, cultural impact, all right? Look, I'm going to get right into it. On my last segment, we dealt with comics and race, and we're still dealing with comics and race, but I'm going to take you back 30 years ago to the independent black comic book market. Throughout the 70s, when I started collecting comic books and I love all those comic book characters. Actually, during the 60s when I was a little boy, of course, I saw the Hercules, Space Ghost, the Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, the Incredible Hulk, the Fantastic Four cartoons. Then in the early 70s, around 73, I started collecting comic books as a elementary school student, and comic books was fascinating. It gave me ideas and things to read and write, and I became a better reader and writer from reading comic books, okay? And that's just the truth. That's the power that the world of wonder that it opened up to me is what comic books gave me. Now, during that time, I also started developing projection. And what I mean, projection means that I start imagining, of course, we all, boys of every various racial and cultural background, what's the first thing we do? We put on scarves or towels and become superheroes. Back when I was growing up, we argued who wanted to be Batman and Robin or who was going to be Green Hornet and Kato. Of course, the boys who grew up in the 60s, we know we're talking about who everybody wanted to be. Kato. Who was Kato? Bruce Lee. Why did we want to be Kato? Because he was the most impressive guy we saw fighting on television. Forget Green Hornet and Batman and Robin. We wanted to be like Bruce Lee. Well, of course, Bruce Lee wasn't a household name then. That's the effect that guy had on the culture. Even when he was practically unknown, he was the guy Kato. You know what I did love about Green Hornet was that smooth voice he had. The original Green Hornet, played by the late Van Williams, had one of the smoothest voices I like. I'm a guy always like, I never knew I would have one of those voices myself. I just always liked them. You quit playing. Y'all know y'all like the way I sound, don't you? You wish your man sound like this, don't you? You know you do. All right. Back to reality. But Bruce Lee made everybody love that character Kato. And it was even an effect on the later Jet Li. Man, I could talk about Jet Li, action star Jet Li. Like Michael J. White has an awesome background. This nerd talk a little bit. But he played a character called, what that character Jet Li played that looked just like Kato. And he did a movie in the late 90s of a character that had to be based on the Green Hornet Kato character, okay? I think it was the Black Hat or something. I just can't remember. Anyway, and then we started imagining superheroes in our images. And we black guys that was coming up in the late 60s and early 70s, we wanted to see black superheroes in our images. Marvel answered some of it with the Black Panther. Then they came up with the Falcon in the 70s, and also Luke Cage, Power Man. Now, if you all been watching any of the Netflix movies, you know, or Marvel, you know who Falcon is now, and you know who Luke Cage, Power Man is now, because of television, right? And the movies, right? Well, we young black males that was growing up wanted Marvel and DC to do more black superheroes. DC responded with a black Green Lantern, John Stewart, back in the late 60s, early 70s. Also in the late 70s with Black Lightning. Now notice all the superheroes that were black had black in front of their name. That's a story for another day. It's like you couldn't look at them and tell they was black. Imagine if you open up a comic book and every time you saw White Lightning, White Panther, White Thor, I mean, come on, you know. Well, in the early late '80s, early '90s, there were black publishers that came out. Comic book, one of my favorite, the guy Jason and Guy Sims, and now Dawood, who was formerly David Sims, but now his name is Dawood, came out with a very popular character at the 1990 Black Expo, Brother Man. Self-published by these brothers, this character blew up and created the black comic book movement. On my YouTube channel, August 2016, I have a full interview. Go to Danny Tanel, YouTube, type it in, YouTube Danny Tanel. On my channel, that is still up from 5 years ago. There was also a movement at that time, the ANIA movement, by 4 different black publishers who formed an alliance. They created a black comic book character called the Purge, Heru, based on the Egyptian god, who also was an influence on other mythologies, and that's a story for another day. Also, Ebony Warrior, these were urban type of Batman type characters. All these guys sold in the thousands during the early 1990s. Also, there was Captain Africa by Dwayne Ferguson, Omega Man by Alonzo Washington. Some of these men I met personally at the Black Expos during the 1990s. You also had black comic books in the 1990s called the Numidian Force, also Lionheart. These were the early 1990s, okay? What happened? When they created the market, here come DC Comics, led by comic book veterans, writers and artists with Milestone Media. Okay, without these black men independently creating the black comic book market, DC Comics would never have financed Milestone Media. Yes, I said it. Man, do I love Milestone? Man, they are great. Some of the greatest all of these are actual comic book covers of actual comic books that I, Nerd Geek Supreme Danny Tanel, own. Okay, and all of these pretty much are the first issues of Milestone Media. Everyone in the black community, at least the baby boomers and some generation Xers, right? You know who Black Enterprise is. You know it was one of the leading finance black magazines in black history. Earl Graves, whom I did have the chance to meet as a writer, Earl Graves and his family did a great job at first educating black people on investing in financing long before Boyce Watkins was in the game. They did a cover of Milestone Media's founders, and these are some of the comic books that Milestone Media published. Hardware, a Iron Man type of black guy. Icon, a black Superman type. The Blood Syndicate, they were created from a accident gone wrong with the police department called the Big Bang. Hey, I won't cover everything, but they were a play on a slant to me of the whole X-Men thing. And of course, their most popular character because of television, Static. Static is one of the most iconic characters of the original Milestone line. And because of the success of going back to my last show, of Black Panther, DC has resurrected the Icon, Hardware, Blood Syndicate, and Static characters. But black men laid the foundation independently, proving to both DC and Marvel that black people did indeed buy and read comic books, and that there are comic books that could cater to the African American market. Hence, these black comic books, all this is 30 years ago. The 1990s. We're not, all of these books were done 30 years ago. But you think because you just started to put on a Black Panther mask and suit, it just started happening. No. Hats off to the early attempts of Marvel and DC, but you did not have the varied type of different characters of black male representation in particular, and black people in particular, until all these brothers invested their own time and money to create the black comic book market that made it possible for DC to invest in Milestone Media, creating Hardware, Icon, the Blood Syndicate, and Static. Now, as I said, of course, I'm a fan of all these guys and certainly the Milestone Media, but we got to tell the truth where the truth is. Without the individual self-sacrifices and actions of black people and black males in particular, there would be no Milestone. I look forward, hopefully, the DCU could ever get itself together. I don't hold my breath for it, but they would bring some of these characters that they financed and created, the Milestone characters, to the forefront. And that's going to be a lead in that I'm going to do. As I told you, this is from the 90s. You think I just woke up this morning and know about all these things? No, I was there. And in spite of some of you just now seeing me in Memphis and Atlanta, I was in on this segment up here, a pioneer black comic book publisher and marketer during the early 1990s, okay? And so, you see this t-shirt here? It was done back in 1994 by a very young black artist named McGowan of my team called the Liberation League. I'll tell you the background on that coming up.